The conference room floated in the middle of space, a massive structure built by the Galactic Coalition for important meetings. Inside, the air was filled with different gases that each species needed to breathe. Force fields separated each section, creating invisible walls that kept everyone alive and comfortable. Admiral Jinho stood in the human section, his dark uniform crisp and clean. He was a tall man with silver hair, even though he was only 50 years old. The stress of leading Earth's defense forces had aged him faster than normal. Behind him stood 3 other humans, each wearing the same uniform with different colored strips on their shoulders. Across from them, separated by the shimmering force fields, sat representatives from 4 different alien species. They were massive creatures, some with scales, others with fur, and one that seemed to be made of living crystal. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Their empires stretched across hundreds of star systems. They had weapons that could crack planets in half and ships the size of Earth's moon. Jinho had seen the records. He knew what they could do. But he also knew what Earth could do, and that knowledge sat heavy in his chest. Commander Yuna stepped forward. She was younger than Jinho, barely 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She carried a datapad, but she didn't look at it. She had memorized everything she needed to say. "Thank you for meeting with us," Yuna said. Her voice was calm and professional. "Earth is grateful for the opportunity to speak with the Coalition." One of the aliens made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. It was the Velthari representative, a being that looked like a giant mantis covered in purple armor. "You are new to the stars, humans. 200 years of space travel. We find it amusing that you requested this meeting." Jinho kept his face neutral. The insult was clear, but he had expected it. Earth was young compared to these ancient civilizations. They saw humanity as children playing with toys they didn't understand. "We have a simple request," Yuna continued. "We ask that the Coalition respect a boundary around our home system. 50 light years in all directions from our sun. No military vessels, no weapons platforms, no fleets claiming to protect us." The laughter came from all 4 aliens this time. The sound was harsh and mocking. The translator struggled to convert all the different noises into something humans could understand. "You demand an exclusion zone?" The Kryn representative spoke now. He was a warrior race covered in thick red scales with eyes like burning coals. "You who have barely left your own star system? You who have no understanding of galactic politics or warfare? It is not a demand," Ambassador Hana said quietly. She had been silent until now, standing to Jinho's left. She was an older woman with white hair pulled back tight. Her face showed no emotion, but her voice carried weight. "It is a warning." "A warning?" The crystal being chimed in, its voice like breaking glass. "What could you possibly warn us about?" Hana took one step closer to the force field. "Cross that line with hostile intent and you will not return. This is not a threat. It is a fact." The room fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter returned louder than before. The Velthari representative stood up, its large body casting shadows across the room. "This is absurd," it said. "We have conquered half this galaxy. Our fleets number in the thousands. Our technology has evolved over millions of years. And you, a species that still uses chemical rockets in some of your outer colonies, you warn us?" Jinho finally spoke. His voice was deep and carried a sadness that surprised even his own people. "We are warning you because we do not want what will happen if you cross that line. We are asking you to stay away for your own safety." "Our safety?" The Kryn warrior laughed again. "You insult us with your arrogance." "It is not arrogance," Hana said. "We are trying to protect you." "Protect us?" The crystal being's voice rose higher. "From what? From your primitive weapons? From your tiny fleet of ships?" Yuna opened her mouth to explain further, but Jinho touched her shoulder. She stopped and stepped back. There was no point in continuing. These beings would not listen. They could not understand what Earth was truly offering them. "We have delivered our message," Jinho said. 50 light years. That is the boundary. Cross it peacefully and you are welcome to talk. Cross it with weapons ready and you will face consequences. "Consequences," the Velthari repeated, still amused. "Tell me, Admiral, what consequences could you possibly enforce?" Jinho looked at each of the aliens in turn. His eyes were tired, but there was something else there too. Something that made the Kryn representative stop laughing for just a moment. "I hope you never find out," Jinho said quietly. The meeting ended shortly after. The aliens departed first, still making jokes among themselves. The humans could hear their laughter even through the force fields and translators. They thought Earth was scared. They thought humanity was trying to bluff its way into being taken seriously. As the human delegation prepared to leave, the Velthari representative sent one final message. It appeared on every human datapad at the same time. When we decide your system has resources we need, we will come. Your boundary means nothing. Your warnings mean nothing. You are children playing games you do not understand. It would be wise to join the coalition properly and accept our protection. Yuna read the message and looked at Jinho. They don't believe us. No, Jinho agreed. They don't. Should we show them? Asked Lieutenant Minho, the youngest member of their delegation. Should we demonstrate what Earth can do? Hana shook her head. That would start a war. Right now we still have a chance for peace. They're going to test the boundary, Yuna said. You know they will. They think we're weak, Jinho nodded slowly. Yes, someone will come. Probably soon. They'll send a fleet to show us our place in the galaxy. And then? Minho asked. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the conference room window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, 50 light-years away from the Coalition's territory. Home. The place humanity would protect at any cost. Then they'll learn why we warned them, Jinho said. And I pray they're smart enough to spread the word to the others. The humans returned to their ship and began the journey back to Earth. Behind them, the Coalition representatives were already making plans. The Kryn Empire, proud and warlike, had decided to teach humanity a lesson about power and respect. They would cross the boundary within 6 months. They would cross it with 40 warships, and Earth would be waiting. 6 months passed like a held breath. On Earth, people went about their daily lives not knowing what was coming. They worked in cities that stretched into the sky. They lived on colonies that orbited Mars and Venus. They traveled between worlds on ships that bent space around them. Life continued as it always had. But in the outer system beyond where civilians traveled, Earth's military watched and waited. Captain Taeyang sat in the command chair of Defense Station Distant Thunder. The station was huge, larger than most cities, but it was hidden. Stealth technology that Earth had developed kept it invisible to almost any scanner. Around it floated hundreds of other stations, all hidden, all waiting. Taeyang was a calm man who rarely showed emotion. He had served in Earth's defense force for 20 years. He had black hair starting to show gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too much. Right now those eyes were focused on the holographic display in front of him. Contact, said Lieutenant Jiwan from the sensor station. Her voice was steady despite what she was seeing. Multiple ships crossing the boundary. 40 vessels. Kryn Empire signatures. Taeyang nodded slowly. Display them. The hologram shifted to show 40 red dots moving through space. They were arranged in a battle formation, weapons charged and ready. They were not trying to hide. They wanted Earth to see them coming. Are they broadcasting anything? Taeyang asked. Yes, sir, Jiwan replied. They're demanding our immediate surrender. They say this is a punishment for our arrogance. They say we have 1 hour to power down all defenses and prepare to accept coalition authority. Engineer Sora spoke up from her station. She was young, only 25, but she was one of the best technical specialists Earth had. Their weapons are active. Shield generators at full power. They're ready for a fight. Taeyang stood up from his chair. He walked to the center of the command deck where everyone could see him. Around the room, 30 crew members waited for his orders. They were all volunteers. They all knew what might happen today. Open a channel to the lead Kryn vessel, Taeyang ordered. The screen changed to show a Kryn commander. He was massive, covered in deep red scales that looked like armor. His eyes burned with confidence and aggression. This was Fleet Commander Vothrak, known throughout the Kryn Empire as someone who had never lost a battle. I am Captain Taeyang of the United Earth Defense Force, Taeyang said calmly. You have crossed into protected space. This is your final warning. Turn back now. Vothrak laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Your final warning? Human. I am here to teach you what power really means. You should have accepted the Coalition's protection when it was offered. Now you will learn your place in the galaxy. We asked you not to come here, Taeyang said. His voice was sad, not angry. We tried to warn you. Your warnings are meaningless, Vothrak replied. I have 40 warships. Each one can destroy a planet. You have a few defense stations and some primitive ships. This will be over in minutes. Taeyang looked at the Kryn commander for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Vothrak's expression changed to confusion. Sorry? You apologize for your weakness? No, Taeyang said. I'm sorry for what's about to happen to you and your crews. Before Vothrak could respond, Taeyang gave a signal. Jiwon pressed a series of buttons. And everything changed. The Kryn sensors went crazy all at once. Their shield generators failed without warning. Their weapons systems went offline. Their engines stopped responding. In 3 seconds, 40 warships became floating pieces of metal with no power. Vothrak roared in anger and confusion. What have you done? What is this? Protocol 1, Taeyang said. We shut down your systems remotely. Your crews are safe, but your ships are disabled. Around the Kryn fleet, space itself seemed to shimmer and fold. Massive vessels began to appear, decloaking one by one. They were twice the size of the Kryn dreadnoughts. Their hulls were dark and smooth, covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift. There were dozens of them, surrounding the disabled Kryn fleet completely. On the Kryn flagship, alarms were screaming. Crew members ran between stations trying to restore power. Nothing worked. Their technology, developed over thousands of years, had simply stopped functioning. This is impossible, Vothrak said, but his voice had lost its confidence. We warned you, Taeyang repeated. He looked tired, not triumphant. We told you not to cross the line. Engineer Sora activated the next phase. On her screen, complex calculations ran faster than any normal computer could process. Molecular disruptors online, she reported. Targeting systems locked. Wait, Vothrak said. And now there was real fear in his voice. Wait, we surrender. We will leave. Taeyang shook his head. You came here with weapons ready to destroy us. You came to teach us a lesson. Now you will learn one instead. Sora pressed the activation key. From the human ships, beams of light shot out. They touched the Kryn vessels and the impossible happened. The ships began to come apart. Not exploding. Not burning. Simply dissolving. Hull plating turned to powder. Internal structures separated into individual molecules. It was surgical and precise. But before the ships completely disappeared, something else happened. Every Kryn crew member vanished in a flash of light. Teleportation technology that the Coalition had never mastered. In seconds, all 1,500 Kryn warriors found themselves in holding cells aboard human vessels. The process took 18 minutes. When it was done, 40 Kryn warships had been reduced to floating clouds of dust and raw materials. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single explosion. The ships had simply ceased to exist. Vothrak found himself in a small gray room with a single window. Through it, he could see what was left of his fleet. Just expanding clouds of particles where mighty warships had been moments before. A screen on the wall activated. Captain Taeyang's face appeared. Your crews are unharmed, he said. You will be returned to Coalition space in escape pods. They have enough supplies to reach the nearest Kryn outpost. What are you? Vothrak asked. His voice was hollow with shock. We are human, Taeyang replied, and we warned you not to cross the line. Tell your people what happened here. Tell the Coalition. Tell anyone who will listen. Earth's boundary is not a suggestion. You could have destroyed us completely, Vothrak said slowly, understanding dawning. You could have killed us all. Yes, Taeyang agreed. But we don't want to kill anyone. We just want to be left alone. Over the next 6 hours, escape pods were loaded with Kryn warriors and launched toward Coalition space. Each pod carried recordings of what had happened. Visual proof that their entire fleet had been eliminated without Earth firing a single conventional weapon. Vothrak was the last to leave. Before his pod launched, he looked back at the massive human vessels. They were already starting to fade from view, their stealth systems reactivating. Why? He asked over the communication channel. Why give us this chance? Why not just kill us and be done with it? Taeyang's voice came back one final time. Because we are not monsters. We are just trying to protect our home. Remember that. And tell your people, do not come back. The escape pod launched, accelerating away from Earth's boundary. Behind it, the human fleet disappeared completely. The only evidence they had been there at all was the slowly dispersing clouds of matter that had once been Kryn warships. On distant thunder, Taeyang returned to his command chair. Around him, his crew was silent. There was no celebration, no sense of victory. They had done what was necessary, but there was no joy in it. Will they listen? Jiwon asked quietly. Taeyang looked at the empty space where the Kryn fleet had been. I don't know, he said. I hope so. But something tells me this is just the beginning. He was right to be worried. In the Coalition's Central Command, leaders from 4 species were already gathering. The Kryn report had reached them, and instead of being warned away, they were becoming angry. Humanity had humiliated one of their member species. That could not stand. They began to plan a response. A real response. They would gather the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen, and they would make Earth understand its place in the galactic order. The news of the Kryn fleet's destruction spread through the Galactic Coalition like fire. Some species were frightened. They remembered the Kryn as unstoppable warriors with powerful ships. If humanity could eliminate 40 of their vessels without a real fight, what else could Earth do? But the 3 major powers of the Coalition were not frightened. They were angry. The Kryn Empire wanted revenge. The Velthari Confederacy saw humanity as a threat to galactic order. The Torvan League worried that if Earth could defy the Coalition, other species might try the same thing. They gathered their forces. Ships came from 100 different worlds, warships that had fought in 1,000 battles, vessels that carried weapons designed to crack planets open, technology that could bend reality itself. They assembled the largest military fleet in recorded history. 3,000 warships gathered at the edge of Earth's boundary. They came from 3 different empires but moved as one. Supreme Commander Velnash led them from his flagship, a massive vessel the size of a small moon. He was Velthari, the species that looked like giant mantises. He had commanded fleets for 200 years and never lost. On Earth's moon, Lieutenant Minji watched the sensors with growing concern. She was stationed at the main monitoring base deep underground where it was protected from attack. Around her, dozens of other officers tracked the approaching fleet. "Sir," she said to Defense Coordinator Daehyun, "they're not hiding. They're broadcasting their intentions on every channel." Daehyun was a tall man in his 60s with scars on his face from an old accident. He had been planning Earth's defense for 30 years. He walked over to Minji's station and looked at the display. 3,000 red dots all moving toward Earth in perfect formation. "Play their broadcast," he ordered. Velnash's voice filled the command center. "Humanity, you have committed an act of war against the Galactic Coalition. You destroyed a Kryn fleet and insulted our authority. We come now not to conquer but to eliminate you as a threat. This is your only chance to surrender. Power down all defenses. Evacuate your worlds. Accept Coalition occupation. You have 1 hour." The broadcast ended. The command center was silent. Everyone looked at Daehyun, waiting for orders. "Response?" Minji asked. Daehyun shook his head. "None. We gave them our warning 6 months ago. We showed them what would happen when the Kryn crossed the line. They chose to ignore it." He pressed a button on his console. "All stations, Protocol Omega is now active. Throughout the solar system, hidden bases received the signal. Defense stations powered up. Ships that had been waiting in stealth mode began to move. And deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities that very few people knew existed, other things awakened. The Coalition fleet crossed the boundary together. 3,000 ships moving in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. They expected resistance. They expected a fight. What they didn't expect was what happened next. Space itself seemed to tear open. Human vessels emerged not from behind stealth fields, but from somewhere else entirely. They simply appeared, as if reality had folded and let them through. There were hundreds of them, each one dark and strange. Their hulls seemed to shift and change, making them hard to look at directly. Pilot Jiwan led a squadron of fighters that moved in ways that should have been impossible. They accelerated to speeds that should have torn them apart. They changed direction without slowing down. They weaved through enemy fire that seemed to move in slow motion around them. Supreme Commander Velnash watched from his flagship with growing confusion. "What are they doing? What technology is this?" His tactical officer had no answer. The sensors couldn't track the human ships properly. They appeared in one place, then another, with no movement in between. They were violating every known law of physics. "All ships, open fire," Velnash ordered. "Destroy them." 3,000 warships opened fire at once. Energy beams and missiles filled space. Enough firepower to sterilize a dozen planets was unleashed in seconds. But the human ships simply weren't there. They phased out of reality just before the weapons hit, then phased back in somewhere else, and then the human weapons activated. They didn't shoot energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, they did something far stranger. The Coalition ships began to move backwards. Not their engines, but time itself. Some vessels found themselves back at the boundary line, seconds before they had crossed. Others found their weapons dismantled before they could fire, the parts floating away as if someone had taken them apart from the inside. Dae-hyun watched the battle from the moon base. "Temporal weapons are working," he reported quietly. "They're not destroying the ships, just sending them back before they cross the line." But then something changed. A massive vessel at the center of the Coalition fleet activated a weapon they had been saving. It was called a reality disruption bomb. It was designed to tear a hole in space itself, creating a wound that would swallow everything nearby. The bomb armed. It began to pulse with terrible energy. Coalition ships quickly moved away from it. This weapon would destroy half their fleet, but it would also take out Earth's defenders. It was a last resort, but Velnash had decided to use it. On the moon base, alarms screamed. "Reality weapon detected," Minji shouted. "Detonation in 30 seconds. Dae-hyun's face went pale. "Can we stop it?" "Not from here," Minji said. "It's too well shielded." But then something else happened. The bomb simply stopped working. Its power core went dark. The energy buildup vanished. Coalition engineers on the bomb ship stared at their screens in shock. Their weapon had been neutralized, but they didn't know how. Nothing had touched it. What they didn't see was the human team that had teleported inside their ship. Engineer Sora and her team of 5 specialists had appeared in the bomb chamber, phased through the shields as if they weren't there. In 4 seconds, they had rewritten the bomb's core programming. Then they were gone, teleported back to their ship before anyone knew they had been there. The Coalition fleet was in chaos now. Ships were disappearing, not destroyed, but simply gone. Others found themselves unable to fire weapons or move. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors showed impossible readings. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. Jiwon's fighter squadron engaged a group of Kryn warships. The Kryn ships were massive, each one 100 times larger than the human fighters. But size meant nothing in this battle. The fighters moved between the warships like water, their weapons firing pulses that shut down systems without destroying hulls. A Kryn dreadnought tried to ram one of the fighters, using its bulk as a weapon. The fighter simply passed through it, phasing out of solid reality for just long enough to avoid the impact. On the other side, it fired again and the dreadnought's engines went offline. In space near Jupiter, a different kind of weapon activated. Small objects no bigger than a human fist emerged from one of the larger human vessels. There were thousands of them. They looked like simple metal spheres. But when they reached the Coalition fleet, they began to replicate. 1 sphere became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. The replication was exponential and fast. Within minutes, there were millions of the spheres. They didn't attack the Coalition ships directly. Instead, they surrounded them, creating clouds of tiny objects that blocked sensors and communications. The Coalition fleet was blind and deaf, cut off from each other. Supreme Commander Velnash stood on his flagship bridge, watching his perfect formation fall apart. "This is impossible," he said. "We have the largest fleet ever assembled. We have weapons that can reshape reality. How are they doing this?" His tactical officer's voice shook as he answered. "Sir, I don't think these are just weapons. I think this is what humans are. This is what they become when someone threatens their home." 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. Not a single Coalition ship had been destroyed, but none of them were functional. They floated dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels powerless. The human fleet surrounded them, dark shapes in the void. Dae-hyun sent a message to all Coalition ships. "You are being transported to the boundary. Your crews will not be harmed. Your ships will be returned to you, but their weapon systems will be permanently disabled. Go back to your space. Tell your leaders what happened here, and do not return." Velnash and the other commanders found themselves teleported to a conference room on a human vessel. They were not restrained. No one threatened them, but they could see through the windows what had happened to their fleet. 3,000 mighty warships reduced to helpless hulks in just 4 hours. A human officer entered the room. She was older, with white hair and calm eyes. Ambassador Hana, the same woman who had warned them 6 months ago. "We told you not to cross the line," she said quietly. "We tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen." Velnash looked at her with a mixture of fear and confusion. "What are you?" he asked. "How is this possible?" Hana sat down across from him. "That's a longer story," she said, "and one you deserve to hear, because you need to understand why we don't want anyone in our space, why we're not your enemy, but we can never let you threaten our home. She pressed a button and a screen appeared on the wall. Let me tell you about what happened to Earth 400 years ago. Let me tell you about the Devourers and what they made us become. The screen on the wall came to life, showing images from Earth's past. Supreme Commander Velnash and the other coalition leaders watched in silence. They had expected to see records of human wars, violence, aggression. They thought they would see proof that humanity was a dangerous species that needed to be controlled. Instead, they saw something completely different. Director Junho appeared on the screen. He was an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He looked more like a teacher than a military commander. My name is Director Junho, he said. I lead the Human Historical Council. What I'm about to show you is classified information that very few humans even know about. But you need to see it. You need to understand why we warned you to stay away from our system. The image changed to show Earth 400 years in the past. It was a beautiful world, blue and green with white clouds swirling across its surface. Humanity had just reached Mars. They had built small colonies there, nothing impressive by galactic standards. They were young and innocent, exploring their own solar system with primitive rockets. We were alone, Junho said, or we thought we were. We hadn't detected any other intelligent life in the galaxy. We were excited about exploration, about learning, about growing. The image shifted to show space near the edge of the solar system. Something was coming. Large objects moving through the darkness between stars. As they got closer, their shape became clear. They were ships, but not like anything the Coalition used. They were organic, grown rather than built. They looked like massive creatures with metal grafted onto their bodies. We detected them 3 days before they reached Earth, Junho continued. We didn't know what they were. We tried to communicate. We sent messages in every form we could think of. Mathematics, music, images. We wanted to make peaceful contact. Researcher Hana appeared on the screen next. She was younger in this recording, her hair still black instead of white. We called them Devourers, she said, because that's what they did. They consumed worlds, not just resources, but life itself. They fed on living beings, processing them for energy. They had already destroyed hundreds of civilizations across the galaxy, but no one knew because they came from beyond the rim, from dark space where no one explored. The Coalition leaders watched as the Devourers entered Earth's solar system. There were 12 of their massive vessels. Each one was larger than a moon. Humanity's entire space fleet, just 200 small ships, moved to intercept them. We fought, Junho said quietly. We threw everything we had at them. Nuclear missiles, railguns, every weapon we had developed. It didn't even slow them down. The recording showed the battle, human ships attacking the Devourers with desperate courage, energy beams and explosions that seemed impressive by human standards. But the Devourers barely noticed. They swatted human ships aside like insects. Their own weapons were terrible to watch, beams that dissolved matter and converted it directly into energy. Within 6 hours, Earth's entire space fleet was destroyed. The Devourers moved past Mars, heading directly for Earth. 4 billion humans waited on the planet's surface, knowing they were about to die. They had no more weapons, no more ships, no way to defend themselves. This is where everything changed, Hana said. Her voice was heavy with old pain. This is where humanity became something different. The recording showed the Devourers reaching Earth orbit. They began to descend toward the planet. Beams of terrible energy shot down, touching cities and forests. Everything they touched began to dissolve, life and matter being converted into fuel for the Devourers. But then something happened that even the Coalition leaders, who had seen countless battles across thousands of years, could not explain. Humans on the planet's surface began to glow, not with technology or weapons, but with something that came from inside them. It started with a few thousand people, then spread. Millions of humans began to shine with a strange light. The recording showed it happening in cities across the planet. We don't fully understand what happened, Junho said. The scientists have theories. Some say it's evolution, a survival mechanism that activated when we faced extinction. Others say it's something that was always in human genetics, waiting for the right trigger. Or the wrong one. The glowing humans rose into the air, not with machines or jetpacks, but simply by willing it. They flew up through the atmosphere toward the Devourers, and as they got closer, they began to change. Their bodies warped and shifted, becoming weapons themselves. Velnash leaned forward, unable to believe what he was seeing. This is not possible, he whispered. On the screen, The transformed humans reached the Devourers. What happened next was almost too fast to follow. The massive alien vessels tried to defend themselves, but nothing worked. The humans passed through their shields as if they weren't there. They tore through the organic hulls with their bare hands. They moved at impossible speeds, striking from all directions at once. The battle lasted 4 days, Hana said. By the end, all 12 Devourer vessels were destroyed. But that wasn't enough. Something in humanity had awakened, and it was angry. It was protective. It wouldn't stop until the threat was completely gone. The recording showed what happened next. The transformed humans didn't return to Earth. Instead, they followed the Devourer's trail back into dark space. They hunted them. Over the next 6 months, they found and destroyed every single Devourer vessel in that region of space. They made sure none survived to warn their kind or return to Earth. We killed them all, Junho said quietly. Every last one. And when it was over, the humans who had transformed came back to Earth. But they were different. Changed. The abilities they had awakened didn't go away. They became part of our species. The screen showed humans returning to Earth. They looked normal again, but recordings showed them doing impossible things, moving objects with their minds, passing through solid walls, seeing things that were light years away. The abilities varied from person to person, but almost all humans had at least some level of these powers now. It passed to our children, Hana explained, and it grew stronger with each generation. We learned to control it, to hide it, to live normal lives most of the time. But the fundamental truth remained. When humanity perceives a threat to Earth, when we believe our home is in danger, we become something else. Something we can't always control. Specialist Yuna appeared on the screen. She was the same woman who had stood with Admiral Jinho at the first coalition meeting. This is why we wanted a boundary, she said. Not to protect us from you, but to protect you from us. When you crossed that line with the Kryn fleet, we barely used any real power. We disabled your ships gently. We sent you home alive. That was us holding back, being careful, staying in control. The screen showed footage from the recent battle with the Coalition fleet, but this time it included additional sensor data, readings that showed energy levels that should have been impossible, temporal distortions, reality fluctuations. The human defenders had been suppressing enormous power, using only a fraction of what they could do. If we had lost control, Yuna said quietly, if we had truly felt that Earth was in danger of being destroyed, we don't know what would have happened. The transformation might have spread to our entire population. 8 billion humans, each with abilities that violate physics. That's what we're trying to prevent. Not for our sake, but for yours. Director Junho appeared again. We're not monsters, he said. We're just people who had something terrible happen to us. We survived, but survival changed us. Now we live with this power, this curse, and we do our best to control it. The boundary is our way of creating safety for everyone. Stay outside it, don't threaten us, and we can all live in peace. The recording ended. The conference room was silent. The coalition leaders sat stunned, trying to process what they had seen. Everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. They weren't a young species with some advanced technology. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. Ambassador Hana, the real one sitting in the room with them, spoke quietly. The Devourers kept no records that we could find. They didn't broadcast their attacks. That's why no one in the galaxy knew about them, but we know that other species had encountered them. We found dead worlds, empty colonies, all with the same signs. The Devourers had been feeding on the galaxy for millions of years. Velnash finally found his voice. You saved us, he said slowly. By destroying them, you protected everyone in the galaxy, and we responded by attacking you. You didn't know, Hana said. How could you? We kept it secret. We thought if we just stayed away from everyone, we could avoid conflict. But we underestimated how the galaxy would react to a species setting boundaries. The Kryn representative, a general named Voth Karan, who was brother to the fleet commander Earth had captured earlier, spoke up. What happens now? You could destroy us all. You could conquer the entire galaxy if you wanted. Hana shook her head. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to live in peace in our own system. You'll be returned to your space. Your ships will be repaired, though their weapons will be removed. And we ask only one thing, leave us alone. And if we do? Velnash asked. If we respect the boundary and never cross it again, then we never have to fight, Hana said. You can tell your people the truth. Tell them about the Devourers. Tell them what humanity became to survive. Let them decide if they want to risk crossing that line again. The coalition leaders were escorted back to their ships over the next few days. They were treated well, given food and medical care. No one threatened them or made demands. It was clear that Earth truly wanted peace, not domination. As Velnash prepared to leave, he looked back at Earth through his ship's windows. It looked so peaceful, so beautiful. Hard to believe that world held such power. He thought about everything he had seen and learned, and he knew that the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 1 year passed after the coalition fleet returned home. For the first few months, Earth waited tensely for retaliation. Defense stations remained on high alert. The military stayed mobilized. Every sensor in the solar system watched for approaching ships, but no attack came. Instead, something unexpected happened. The truth spread across the galaxy like ripples in water. Commander Minho stood at the edge of the boundary, supervising the construction of new warning beacons. They were being placed every light year along the exclusion zone, massive structures that broadcast in every known galactic language. The message was simple and clear. Beyond this point lies Earth. Earth protects its own. Turn back. Minho was a younger officer, only 35, but he had been promoted quickly after the battle. He had good instincts and a calm mind. Right now, he was watching the construction crews work on the latest beacon when his communication device beeped. "Commander," said the voice of Lieutenant Sora, "we have multiple ships approaching the boundary. 12 vessels. They're broadcasting peaceful intentions, but they're definitely military ships." Minho's heart rate increased slightly. "What species?" "Mixed," Sora replied. "I'm seeing Torvin, Velthari, and some others I don't recognize. They're moving slowly, weapons powered down. They're requesting permission to approach the boundary for talks." This was new. In the past year, most species had simply avoided the area entirely. Trading ships went the long way around. Military patrols stayed far away. But no one had actually requested permission to approach. "Hold position," Minho ordered. "Let me contact command." Within an hour, a decision came back. Earth would meet with them, but not inside the boundary. A neutral station would be constructed exactly at the boundary line. Both sides could send representatives. The meeting took place 3 days later. The station was small and simple, just a room with life support and communication equipment. On one side sat human representatives. On the other sat delegates from 6 different species. Ambassador Hana led the human delegation. She was older now, the stress of the past year showing in new lines on her face. Beside her sat Director Junho and Captain Taeyang. The alien delegates looked nervous. They kept glancing at the humans as if expecting them to suddenly transform into the beings they had seen in the recordings. But the humans just sat calmly, waiting. Finally, the Torvin delegate spoke. His name was Ralketh, and he was a diplomat who had served for 40 years. "We come with information," he said. His voice translator made him sound formal and careful. "And with questions. May we speak freely?" "Please do," Hana said. Ralketh took a deep breath. "After your demonstration of power, the Coalition investigated your claims about the Devourers. We searched our historical databases. Many species found records they had forgotten or suppressed. The Devourers were real. They had attacked dozens of civilizations over millions of years. My own species lost 3 colony worlds to them, 5,000 years ago. We erased the records because we couldn't fight them and didn't want to create panic." Junho leaned forward slightly. "So you believe us now?" "We do," Ralketh said. "And we understand that by destroying them, you saved countless lives across the galaxy. Species that exist today might have been consumed if the Devourers had continued." "We didn't do it to save the galaxy," Taeyang said quietly. "We did it to save Earth, but we're glad others benefited." Another delegate spoke up, a Velthari named Shinara. She was smaller than most of her species, with lighter-colored armor. "Our species has a question. The power you showed, the abilities your people developed, are they growing? Are you becoming more powerful over time?" Hana considered the question carefully. "Yes," she admitted. "Each generation seems to have slightly stronger abilities than the last. We're learning to control them better, to use them safely, but the core truth remains. We are most dangerous when we feel Earth is threatened." "And if you never feel threatened?" Shinara asked. "If everyone respects your boundary and leaves you in peace, then we're just people," Hana said simply. "We work, we love, we raise families, we create art and music. We explore our own solar system and try to build a good life. The power is there, but we don't want to use it. A third delegate from a species called the Jintari spoke nervously. Some in the galaxy are afraid. They worry that eventually you'll decide the boundary isn't enough, that you'll expand and conquer. Junho shook his head. We have no interest in conquest. We never did. We set the boundary to create a safe distance, not as a starting point for expansion. All we've ever wanted is to be left alone. And if someone crosses the boundary by accident? Ralketh asked. A trading ship with navigation errors? A colony ship looking for a new home? We know the difference between a threat and a mistake, Taeyang said. If a ship crosses without hostile intent, we'll help them repair and guide them back safely. We're not looking for excuses to fight. The meeting continued for several hours. The alien delegates asked many questions. They wanted to understand human intentions, human capabilities, human limits. The humans answered as honestly as they could, though they kept some information private for security reasons. At the end of the meeting, Ralketh stood up. I cannot speak for the entire coalition, he said, but I can speak for my own species. The Torvan League will respect Earth's boundary. We will spread word that humanity seeks only peace within their own space, and we will remember that you eliminated a threat we couldn't fight. The other delegates agreed, each in their own way. They departed peacefully, returning to their respective governments with their reports. Over the following months, more delegations came. Some were curious scientists wanting to understand human abilities. Others were military strategists assessing if humanity truly posed no threat. Still others were simply species who wanted to say thank you for destroying the Devourers. Captain Taeyang received a message on a private channel one evening. It was encrypted with old coalition codes. When he decoded it, he found it was from Ralketh, the Torvan diplomat. Captain Taeyang, the message read, I wanted to contact you privately. What I'm about to tell you is not official, but I think you should know. Before the Devourers were destroyed, they had been moving toward coalition space. We found navigational data in their old trails. Within another 50 years, they would have reached our core worlds. My species would likely have been consumed. So would dozens of others. You saved us, even though you didn't know we existed. I wanted you to know that many of us understand what you did, and we are grateful. Taeyang showed the message to Ambassador Hana. They sat in silence for a while, thinking about what might have happened if humanity had not fought back 400 years ago. Do you think we'll always have to be alone? Hana asked quietly. She was looking out a window at the stars beyond Earth's boundary. Will we ever be able to join the galaxy properly? I don't know, Taeyang admitted. The power in us is real. The danger is real, but maybe with time, as we learn better control, as the galaxy learns to trust us. He didn't finish the sentence. Neither of them knew what the future held, but things were changing. Slowly, carefully, contact was increasing. Some species began sending small delegations to the boundary, not to threaten but to talk. Scientists wanted to exchange information. Historians wanted to share records of the Devourer attacks. Even some military officers came to discuss defensive strategies in case other threats emerged from dark space. Earth responded cautiously. They shared some information but kept their most powerful secrets protected. They allowed limited scientific exchange, but no one inside the boundary. It was a delicate balance, building trust while maintaining safety. Lieutenant Jiwon, who had flown in both battles against the coalition, was reassigned to diplomatic security. She escorted visiting aliens who were allowed to approach the boundary stations. She found the work interesting, watching species who had once attacked now trying to build bridges. One day she escorted a Kryn warrior named Danik. He was young, barely old enough to serve in their military. He wanted to see the boundary where his people had been defeated. I was supposed to be on one of those ships, he told Jiwon quietly. My older brother commanded one of the vessels in the first Kryn fleet. I was scheduled to join him, but I got injured in training and stayed behind. I'm sorry, Jiwon said. She didn't know what else to say. Don't be, Danik replied. My brother came home. He's alive because you showed mercy. He tells stories now about how humanity could have killed them all but chose not to. He teaches young warriors that true strength is knowing when not to fight. Jiwon looked at the young Kryn warrior. A year ago, his people had been enemies. Now here he was trying to understand. What will you do now? She asked. Return home, Danik said, and tell others what I learned here. That the boundary isn't a threat. It's a gift. You're protecting us as much as yourselves. Stories like this became more common. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, the fear was being replaced with understanding. Some species even began defending Earth when others spoke against them. The Torvan League officially declared that any attack on Earth would be considered an attack on all Torvan worlds. On Earth itself, people went about their lives. Most didn't know about the diplomatic changes. They knew the boundary existed, knew about the battles, but the daily reality of life didn't change much. They still went to work, raised children, pursued dreams. The power inside them remained mostly dormant, waiting for a threat that hopefully would never come again. Director Junho stood with Ambassador Hana one evening, watching the sun set over the ocean. They were both old now, tired from years of careful diplomacy and constant vigilance. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Junho asked. "Warning them instead of hiding what we are?" Hana thought about it. "Yes," she said finally. "Secrets have a way of coming out. Better they learned from us than by forcing us to show them. And the future? That," Hana said with a small smile, "is for the next generation to decide. We built the bridge. They can choose whether to cross it." Far from Earth, in Coalition space, the story of humanity was becoming legend. Some species told it as a warning. Others told it as a tale of survival and strength. But all agreed on one thing: Earth's boundary was to be respected. Beyond that line lay a species that had faced extinction and survived by becoming something new, something powerful, and perhaps one day something that could walk among the stars as friends rather than threats. But for now, the boundary remained. The beacons broadcast their warnings, and humanity watched and waited, hoping for peace but ready for whatever might come. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Earth had warned them once. They would not need to warn them again.